The bell above the boutique door gave a soft, elegant chime, like it was trained to greet only a certain kind of person. Nyla and Lena stepped inside. Everything about the store whispered exclusivity. Polished marble floors. Spotlights casting halos over €1,000 dresses. An assistant folded a silk scarf with the care of someone handling a holy relic. But no one looked at them. Not really. A tall man in a suit glanced up, eyes flickering from Nyla's vintage denim to Lena's handmade jacket, then flicked back down to his phone like nothing had happened. Another saleswoman passed by, offering a practiced smile to a blonde customer in heels, then walked right past Nyla and Lena as if they were shadows. Nyla kept walking, her chin high, her sneakers squeaking slightly on the pristine floor. "See anything you like?" Lena whispered, biting back a grin. She always had a way of turning tension into a joke. "Not yet," Nyla said. Still waiting for the welcome champagne. They stopped in front of a display, a mannequin draped in a hand-stitched crimson gown, tagged at €12,800. Nyla leaned in to study the seams. That's when she appeared. The store manager. She was everything the boutique wanted to be: sleek ponytail, blazer so sharp it could cut glass, and that expression, polite superiority with a dash of contempt. She didn't greet them. Instead, she turned to one of the security guards at the back and made a small, casual gesture, a flick of the wrist, a tilt of her chin. Nyla saw it. So did Lena. The manager finally turned to them, voice smooth as silk, but lined with ice. "Can I help you with something specific?" Not "may I help you?" Not "welcome." Just that, a thinly veiled "what are you doing here?" Nyla smiled. It wasn't warm. "No thanks," she said. "We'll come back tomorrow." The manager blinked, caught off guard by the calm. "Tomorrow?" "Yeah," Nyla said, turning toward the exit. "Tomorrow feels like a better day to be seen." They walked out, silence trailing behind them like perfume. The next morning, the boutique opened at exactly 10 a.m., just like always. At 10:06, the same bell above the door chimed. Heads turned. Same girls. And yet, not the same at all. Nyla stepped in first. Her navy blue suit fit like a second skin, shoulders sharp, waist cinched, the cut screaming custom. Her locks were tied back into a sleek low bun, gold accents in her ears catching the light. Lena followed. Cream-colored pantsuit, minimalist jewelry, heels that clicked across the marble like punctuation marks. Her makeup soft but intentional. Her walk, slower now. Not because of hesitation, but because she owned the space. No one said anything. For a moment, the entire boutique paused. One of the assistants, the same one who'd ignored them the day before, suddenly found herself adjusting a display that didn't need adjusting. Another whispered something to the guy at the register. Even the lighting felt different. The store manager appeared again. Same ponytail. Same blazer. But this time, a slightly tighter smile. "Welcome to Maison Duvet," she said, voice a bit too bright. "Is there anything I can help you find today?" Nyla looked her straight in the eyes. No smile this time. "You sure we're in the right place?" she asked, her tone casual, but not soft. The manager blinked. "Excuse me?" Lena tilted her head, playing along. "I just don't want to make the mistake of shopping in a store that doesn't welcome women like us." The room tensed. The manager let out a small, practiced laugh. "We welcome everyone, of course." Nyla took a slow step forward. "Interesting. Because yesterday, I walked in wearing handmade clothes, and you tried to escort me out." A beat of silence. The manager's expression didn't change, but her eyes did, a flicker of realization. Or fear. "I'm sorry," she said, too quickly. "There must have been some misunderstanding." Lena interrupted. "We remember it clearly." Before the manager could reply, a new voice spoke. "Excuse me, ladies. Would you mind joining me upstairs? Every head turned. A woman in her 60s stood near the back staircase. Silver hair. Perfectly tailored black suit. Presence. Authority. The founder. The original owner. Nyla turned, met her eyes, and gave a slow nod. They followed her up the stairs, past the couture gowns, the stylists who suddenly forgot how to breathe. The manager just stood there, frozen. Not yet fired. Not yet safe. The office upstairs was a world away from the glossy boutique below. No chandeliers. No gold-framed mirrors. Just soft light, clean lines, and a giant sketch pinned to the wall, an early design of Maison Duvet's first iconic dress. The older woman moved behind her desk and gestured for Nyla and Lena to sit. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she studied them, like she was remembering something. "You've grown into those eyes," she finally said, looking at Nyla. Nyla nodded slowly. "It's been a while, Madame Rue." Madame Rue smiled, a real one this time. "And you walk like a woman who built her name from calluses and fabric scraps." "Just like I did." Lena gave Nyla a look. "Wait, you know her?" Nyla leaned back, voice steady. "She was the first designer I ever admired. When I was 15, I mailed her a sketch with a handwritten letter, asking how to get started. She wrote back. Said, 'Come find me when you've got something real to say with your work.' And you did," Madame Rue said. She opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. "I've followed your brand since the very first capsule line. You and your partner here, bold, minimal, unapologetic. You brought something raw to the industry. Something I never could." Nyla's throat tightened for just a second, but she didn't show it. Madame Rue slid the folder toward her. Inside were contracts. Branding mock-ups. A plan. "I've been quietly looking for a successor," she said. "Someone who could inherit the Maison without losing its soul. You came in yesterday, and I watched how this place treated you. That's how I knew." Lena blinked. "Wait. You let that happen?" Madame Rue didn't flinch. "I don't believe in polished resumes or curated portfolios. I believe in pressure. The kind that shows you who's meant to lead." Nyla looked down at the papers. Her name, her actual name, was already printed at the top of the partnership contract. Lena's hand slipped into hers under the table. Silent, strong. Madame Rue leaned forward. "Maison Duvet is yours, if you want it. But you must decide how this place will carry your name. And whether that manager downstairs fits into it." The air grew heavier. Nyla didn't answer right away. She looked out the office window, down at the showroom floor. Where the manager still stood. Waiting. Uncertain. Downstairs, the boutique was quiet again, but not calm. The manager shifted near the entrance, pretending to adjust a perfume display. Her palms were sweating. She hadn't seen Madame Rue in person in months, and now the woman had taken two strangers, no, those two, straight into her office. She had a sinking feeling. The kind that makes the air feel too thick to breathe. Upstairs, Nyla still hadn't spoken. She stood by the window now, arms crossed, watching the slow choreography of luxury play out beneath her, customers drifting through the aisles, stylists fluttering like silk in motion. "I don't want revenge," she said finally, her voice quiet. "But I do want change." Madame Rue nodded. "That's what leadership is. The ability to cut without bleeding everyone." Lena leaned forward. "So, what do we do about her?" Nyla was quiet for a moment. Then, "I want her to understand why what she did matters. I want her to look me in the eye and see me. Not the label. Not the outfit. Me." Madame Rue tapped her nails once against the desk. "Then bring her up here." Lena's eyebrows shot up. "Wait, now. You said you want her to see who you are." So show her. Nyla's heart thudded once, hard. She hadn't expected that. Hadn't planned this far ahead emotionally. But she nodded. I'll do it. Minutes later, the manager was called upstairs. Confused. Cautious. Her smile still stitched into place like a cracked mask. When she walked in and saw Nyla sitting calmly beside Madame Rue, contract folder open, Lena sipping espresso like she lived there, her smile faded. Madame Rue didn't look up. Close the door, please. The click of it shutting was louder than it should have been. The manager cleared her throat. Is everything all right? Nyla met her eyes. No anger. Just truth. Do you remember me? The manager looked flustered. Of course. You came in yesterday. No. Nyla leaned forward. Do you remember how you looked at me? How you waved for security before I said a word? The manager swallowed. I was doing my job. Then you're not doing the right one, Lena said sharply. Madame Rue raised a hand, silencing the room. I think, she said coolly, you owe Nyla an apology. Not just because of who she is. But because of who you weren't, when it mattered. The manager looked between them all, chest rising and falling too fast now. She was cornered. But not destroyed. Not yet. The silence was brutal. The manager stood frozen, her polished image unraveling at the edges. No clipboard. No counter to hide behind. Just 3 women, and the weight of everything she didn't want to face. I didn't know who you were, she finally said, voice brittle. That's the point, Nyla replied, calm and razor-sharp. You thought that excused everything. The manager's mouth opened, then closed again. She wasn't used to being out of control. She tried to find footing, something professional, diplomatic, but there was no script for this. She began again, then stopped. Looked at Nyla fully, maybe for the first time. I'm sorry. For the way I treated you. It was wrong. Nyla didn't respond right away. She studied the woman, the tightness in her jaw, the panic she was trying to smother under poise. It wasn't enough. Not yet. Tell me why it was wrong, she said. The manager blinked. Excuse me? You said sorry. But was it for the humiliation? Or because you got caught? Lena folded her arms, leaning back in her chair. We want to know which part of yesterday felt right to you at the time. The manager flushed. I misjudged you. I saw clothes and assumed status. That's what people do in this industry. No, Nyla said quietly. That's what people choose to do. That landed. The manager's voice lowered. I've been trained to spot potential clients in seconds. I thought I was protecting the brand image. I didn't think. I didn't feel anything. And that scares me now. She looked down. I see it. I see what I became in there. You deserved respect from the moment you walked through those doors, not because of who you are now, but because you were human. I'm sorry I forgot that. This time, it landed different. Madame Rue leaned back, silent but watchful. Nyla didn't speak. She just nodded once. Measured. Powerful. You've got 2 weeks, she said finally. To show this team what leadership really looks like. The kind that uplifts. Not polices. The manager's eyes widened. Wait. I'm staying. That depends on what you do with this second chance, Nyla said, standing. Some lessons stick better when you're made to grow through them. And I'm not here to create another empire that fears difference. She turned to leave. Lena followed, pausing just long enough to say, we're not your clients anymore. We're your standard. And just like that, they walked out, heels sharp, heads higher. End of chapter 5. Shall we keep going into chapter 6, the shift, where we start seeing how the boutique begins to change? Or want a twist to shake things up a bit? 2 weeks. That's what Nyla had given her, and it felt both like a lifeline and a sentence. The manager, whose name, rarely used, even by clients, was Camille, stood in front of the staff the next morning, not with a clipboard or attitude, but with trembling fingers wrapped around a mug of coffee she hadn't even touched. Nyla wasn't there. Neither was Lena. That made it harder. Camille cleared her throat. I want to address what happened last week. The room stilled. A few stylists avoided her gaze. One assistant, the one who'd laughed behind her hand the day Nyla walked in wearing denim, suddenly found the floor intensely interesting. Camille continued. You all saw how I treated 2 women based solely on how they looked. I made a judgment that didn't just reflect my bias, it confirmed it. And that reflects on all of us. This boutique is changing. And we're going to change with it. No applause. No warmth. But no eye rolls either. Progress. By the end of the day, 2 interns had been promoted to full-time stylists, one of whom had once been scolded by Camille for her too urban fashion sense. A customer of color, usually handed over to junior staff, was personally assisted by Camille, who spent 40 minutes listening to her story before recommending a dress. Baby steps. But steps. Meanwhile, Nyla and Lena were watching. Not from the shadows, but not from the floor either. They sat in a nearby cafe across from the boutique, cappuccinos in hand, watching through the boutique windows like directors reviewing a stage. She's trying, Lena said. Still awkward as hell, but trying. That matters more than the apology, Nyla replied. Change isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. Lena raised an eyebrow. You sure you're not running for office next? Nyla laughed, not her usual quiet laugh, but a full one, from her chest. Then her phone buzzed. An email. Subject, partnership proposal, Maison Duvet x Nyla Noir. Her smile faded into something sharper. Focused. Looks like the real game just started. The showroom was unrecognizable. Gone were the cold white walls and sterile minimalism. In their place, warmth, texture, soul. One corner displayed raw sketches pinned next to the finished garments they inspired. Another featured a fabric wall where customers could touch everything, denim, silk, woven cotton, not just look from afar. But the centerpiece? A runway slicing through the boutique like a bold signature. Nyla stood at the edge of it, heart beating faster than she'd ever admit. Behind the curtain, models prepped, not just tall and waif-like, but diverse in age, shape, skin, and story. Some were local artists. Some were seamstresses. One was a single mom who once tailored clothes in a basement studio. This wasn't just a launch. This was a declaration. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd, editors, influencers, old guard fashion royalty, all leaning in. Then, music. A slow pulse, deep and confident. The first model stepped out. The collection, Second Look, was everything Nyla had once been told not to design. Strong silhouettes in unconventional fabrics. Patterns inspired by West African embroidery, lined with Parisian tailoring. Street meets heritage. Rough edges polished with intention. As the models walked, the message became clear: you don't have to be seen to exist. But when you are finally seen, make sure they never forget. From across the room, Madame Rue stood watching. Arms crossed, lips pressed into a line of pride. Lena came up beside her. You knew she'd do this, didn't you? I knew she had it in her, Rue said. But this? She exhaled slowly. This is hers alone. When the final model left the runway, the lights faded. Then came the applause, real, raw, rising like a wave. Not polite. Not performative. Earned. Nyla stepped onto the runway last. Not in heels. In her original vintage sneakers, cleaned but not replaced. She looked out over the crowd. And saw Camille, standing in the back, clapping. No badge. No clipboard. Just a woman who had chosen to show up, and to stay. Nyla didn't smile. She nodded. A week later, Paris was in full spring bloom. On Rue Saint-Honoré, where the air always smelled faintly of perfume and pride, a small crowd had gathered outside Maison Duvet. But they weren't queuing to get in. They were looking at the window. Not just a display, a statement. A mannequin stood center stage, dressed in one of Nyla's most powerful pieces, a deep indigo suit inspired by the one she wore the day she returned. Beside it, a second mannequin in the same vintage-styled jacket from that first day, hand-patched, every stitch preserved. Between them, a mirrored plaque. It didn't list prices. It didn't name brands. It said, "Style has no status. Greatness has no dress code. Nyla Noir, Creative Director, Maison Duvet." Inside, the boutique was buzzing, not with exclusivity, but with energy. Stylists were engaging. Customers were lingering. The boutique had become more than a place to shop. It was alive. A place to belong. Nyla stood near the back, watching a young girl, no older than 15, walking slowly along the dress racks with wide eyes. She reminded her of herself. The girl looked up, caught Nyla watching, and smiled shyly. Nyla smiled back, not the polite kind. The kind that said, "I see you." Lena nudged her. "You think she'll be sending you a sketch next?" Nyla laughed. "God, I hope so." They stepped toward the window together, watching their past reflected back at them, not with shame, but with pride. And as the light shifted, the glass caught their reflections. Not as intruders. Not as guests. But as the owners.